I'm Gilad. Lately, we've been hearing about young Israeli Arabs who have journeyed to Iraq and Syria to fight for the Islamic State, the radical militia. When they returned to Israel, for whatever reason, some of them were arrested and indicted, but now there's a new case when the Interior Minister Gilad Erdan has decided not to issue a passport to a former IS fighter who's now stranded in Turkey. Now, to talk to us about the perhaps legal implications of this story, we are now joined by Professor Eugene Kontorovich. He's an international law expert at Northwestern University and the Kohelet Forum. Hello, Professor Kontorovich. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good to be here.
So this person in question is an Israeli citizen. Can he not be allowed to return to his homeland? Is that even an option?
Absolutely. So passports, travel papers allowing you to come in and out of the country are not an unconditional and absolute right of citizenship, but they are rather a privilege which is afforded to the vast majority of citizens, but like in most other countries, can be suspended or restricted for reasons of national security or other concerns. And just to put this in context, things always seem insidious when it's presented that Israel is doing this thing to some young Israeli Arab. But what Israel is doing is actually in the context of most Western countries facing problems from returning ISIS fighters, taking similar measures on a much larger scale. So, for example, Australia has suspended the passports of maybe 100 Australian citizens who wish to return because of their suspected involvement in ISIS. Canada is very aggressively suspending and revoking the passports of citizens and perhaps even citizenship itself. The United Kingdom has long had a very aggressive program allowing not just passports, but actually citizenship itself to be revoked from people who conceivably pose a danger, generally due to Islamicist activity, a power wielded basically unilaterally by the Home Secretary.
I wouldn't like to defend this man or any other former ISIS fighters. I'm pretty sure that they are vile people if they made this choice. But according to, I don't know, the very basic democratic premise, a person is innocent until proven guilty. And in order to do that, they have to stand trial.
Okay. So let me again revert to the general examples I gave of countries, I think, of impeccable democratic credentials: Britain, Australia, Canada. So in none of these cases is the suspension of citizenship preceded by a trial before a judge or a jury. And the reason is the principle of guilty until proven innocent applies to punishment. And punishment refers to things like deprivation of liberty, being put in jail, being executed. Having something that's a privilege, not a basic across-the-board right, suspended, is not generally considered punitive. It's rather a safety measure, and can thus be done without trial. And Israel would be very anomalous amongst Western countries if it were to require a trial. In particular, since the trial requires the presence of the accused, if the rationale is people by joining hostile military forces, and I think Israel is reasonable to classify, maybe more reasonable even than Canada or Australia, to categorize ISIS as an actual hostile force, then you don't have the right to return. And of course, this is not a new thing. For example, many people from America and Britain joined the Axis powers in World War II. And their
were prevented from coming back.
Sometimes they were prosecuted when they did come back, but sometimes they were prevented. Their citizenship was stripped, their passports were stripped. It's actually a very ancient principle in international law, which the United States was a pioneer of 200 years ago, that when you join the forces of a hostile, non-friendly entity, you don't need to be treated like just a regular citizen. But in this case, by the way, Israel is being 2 degrees more lenient than the other Western countries. They're not yet stripping his citizenship, and they're not even revoking his passport. Right? It seems that they're suspending his passport or temporarily restricting his travel privileges.
Uh-huh.
And again, I don't know of a Western country that thinks that you're not allowed.
Right. So in Israel's case, is this a precedent unrelated to that person's involvement in radical Islamist groups? Has Israel prevented the issue of travel documents from any other people under totally different circumstances?
Well, generally, the rationales for doing this kind of thing used by most Western countries are limited to serious national security threats posed by people's activities, usually in hostile forces. So I don't know if there have been cases like this. Again, the number of Israelis going to join ISIS, for example, has been relatively small compared to other countries.
Mm-hmm. All right, Professor Eugene Kontorovich, international law expert at Northwestern University and Kohelet Forum. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Goodbye. And we are now joined by Hussein Abu Hussein. He's the lawyer of Marhan Khaldi, the Israeli who is stranded in Turkey after allegedly taking part in fighting on behalf of the Islamic State. Hello, attorney. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So it seems to me that what the state is saying is pretty reasonable. The man joined ISIS, and which is an enemy organization, and therefore should not be allowed to return to Israel.
First of all, I have not met my client until now, and all the facts and the materials that I have are through his family here in the country. What I know that he is injured and that he is suffering from severe injuries in his body, and he is in custody in Turkey. His family called him in the last month, since last October when he left the country, in order to persuade him to come back. I understood indirectly that he was taking part in the war in Iraq, and now he wants to return back to the country, and according to my legal opinion, there is no possibility to not allow him to return back.
Well, why not? If he took part in a terror organization, an enemy organization, on grounds of homeland security, it seems pretty reasonable that Israel wouldn't allow him to come back.
First of all, he is an Israeli citizen, and as an Israeli citizen, the cancellation of his citizenship in Israel is not allowed unless there is huge materials against him, and until now there is no one precedent of cancellation of Israeli citizenship. I would like to mention that in the last years of the 90s, there was a petition to the Supreme Court to cancel the citizenship of Yigal Amir, who was convicted of the killing of the Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. And the Supreme Court adopted the legal opinion of the General Advisor of the government, the General Legal Advisor, that the cancellation of the citizenship is not allowed due to the basic rights laws.
Why does he want to come back? Because he's injured? Was he injured in battle and wants to come back for medical treatment?
No, it is not just that. I believe that he came to the conclusion that this is the wrong way, the wrong place to be. And even if he has done any offenses, according to the legal system here, it is possible to issue a writ of accusation against him and to bring him to legal procedures.
Right.
It is not allowed to convict him just by a decision of the Minister of Interior.
Right. You said that you haven't met your client, but you've been in touch with his family. Did you get an idea of how this young man from Nazareth, even how did he become interested in joining ISIS? What are the processes that led him to this rather radical decision?
Actually, we have seen in the last few months hundreds or thousands of young people from among all the world who are going to take part in this stupid war in Iraq and in Syria. Not just Muslims, not just Arabs, from all around the countries, and even I have heard about a Jewish young woman who participated in a battle there. And when you ask yourself,